Hey YouTube, welcome back to a special game review. So I've been delaying this review for quite some time already. It has been 2 months since FF7 Rebirth came out, and I wanted to spend more time with the game, specifically New Game Plus and Hard Mode, just so that I can, put my thoughts together as well, and maybe experience new story beats that I might have missed out on my first playthrough. So some things I need to address before we start this review. There is a lot of Final Fantasy VII bias involved here, so don't be surprised with some of my takes. I did play the original back in 97. Actually, I was pretty late. I was still a kid. I was watching my brother play it first. And I got into it because of the music, curiosity as a child, and the JRPGs just look so good. Going back to transitioning from the first installment, which is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Remake at the time, back in 2020, was very, very monumental to me because, of course, with all the nostalgia involving from the OG, and probably how many years later, the build up to Remake as well, from the announcement in 2015 to the long wait of 5 years until we got the game. So yeah, I had high expectations there, and they delivered really well. I don't want to get too much into it since this is a Rebirth review. All my expectations were met. They did a good job at executing these characters, making you fall in love with each character and giving them a time to shine as well. For the music, we don't even need to get into that because the music is phenomenal. They actually won Best Music that year. I guess it had a lot of controversy when it came to just a Midgar portion of the game. But once we got that game, once we got Remake, you can see how they delivered and expanded that Midgar portion. Alright, so moving on to Rebirth. So coming from Remake, I was thinking of how they would address the open world, or should I say just the world in general. Back then, I was thinking maybe like an FF10 style of just large zones, and they're all just connected in a way. We do get those vehicles maybe sometime in the story that we could just have a linear path going through our objective. But they delivered really well with this one. It's somewhat of a linear open world, if that makes sense. Like, obviously they're split up to regions, and before you move on to another region, you have to either do the main quest there or get through either a small dungeon, a cave to move or progress to the other region. But the way they did it was, it felt like the first region could be one whole game. That's how much it felt like. So the way they tackled the open world in this game, it felt like it was a mix of different games from other developers. So they got the DNA of the Ubisoft side quests from the checklist or even the quest marks. They also had that Elden Ring essence. I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but the style of exploration becomes rewarding with extended story beats. I guess other things that will reward you, such as items or even music to a degree. Each part of the world had like pockets of life or like little tidbits of what's going on with the story. So it kind of rewards you and sucks you into that world and makes it more immersive in a way that once you do these quests, you understand where these NPCs are coming from. You understand what's going on with maybe the Chocobo farm. Everything leads to going back to Calm as well. Apparently, they're being run by Mako through some pipes, right? And then these pipes eventually through time get damaged by enemies. And at the same time, you also have these mini games that are littered throughout the world, which questing can be very draining at times, especially when you're in a rush or sometimes you just want to move forward with the game. So some of the side quests can get dragging. But, depending what kind of person you are, if you're the type to explore and get more out of this game, the side quests wouldn't be dragging at all. They're actually really rewarding, as I said earlier. So the quests do pay off with these characters in your party. There's like a social bonding mechanic within the game that does reward you sometime through the game and also another time later on. So when you do these quests, they're linked to a character just like Aerith or even Red 13. And then when you get new characters within the story, such as Yuffie and Kate Sith, it does add to the social bonding in the game. Before I continue, my review might be a little all over the place because I do have an outline with me right now. I'm actually looking at it from time to time. Sometimes I might have to repeat some of the things I've said earlier just so that I can help relate with the review, right? There was one thing that this game, as a, I guess, JRPG or action JRPG or whatever genre this is considered as nowadays. Going back to the 90s, when we would experience this JRPGs or RPGs, let's say from Alundra 2, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that game, or let's say FF9, FF9, FF10, and even like the modern ones such as the Horizon, which are not Japanese RPGs. They're just, RPGs or adventure in that type of genre. So all of those games I mentioned have something in common wherein, and these are just some of the games, wherein when you enter a town, it's very gratifying to the player and to your characters as well. To expand on that, it's not just the side quests that you get from the bulletin board or NPCs. At the same time, they also litter these mini games hidden within the towns. Just for example, just Queen's Blood itself. Like when you get into a town, you just want to challenge any Queen's Blood player right there. Or like in the second region, I won't get further than Junon here. You do get into Fort Condor again, which is in the Yuffie DLC. And that was fun. Like, these mini games change through time. And sometimes, they might drag a little too long. But once you feel that, it's over. Or the game basically tells you, don't worry. Here's another thing you can do. You can forget about that for a while. By the way, you don't need to do these side quests or play these mini games. Some of them can be revisited later on. After you do a certain part of the region, there is a chance to go back to the other regions. And I think that was a great way to control pacing for the player. Because sometimes the player is worried to move on because I might not be able to go back here again. But I think the game kind of gives you hints that don't worry about it. Just move on, come back here, maybe with a new vehicle, and maybe you can progress again with these side quests or games. So since I mentioned it already, another great aspect to JRPGs or RPGs in general would be vehicles or traversing towns or other regions within the game. Obviously, Final Fantasy is known for the chocobos, and what they did with the chocobos here, they did not add chocobo breeding whatsoever, but what they did add was different versions of chocobos within a region. So we have chocobos that could climb walls, we have chocobos that could glide, a jumping ability on mushrooms, and the last one is basically a jetpack on water. It changes every time you move through the game. And other than that, we also have like a buggy, and later on, not to get into spoilers, but if you play the OG, there is a certain plane that kind of teases you for part 3. Damn, so this part is probably one of the most underrated aspects of Final Fantasy VII. The remake and rebirth, basically the whole trilogy. And I think this will carry on in the third part. It's NPCs. A lot of people don't talk about NPCs, I think that's it, throughout all the reviews I've seen. and obviously because they're overshadowed by other things, other better things, right? But NPCs really carry the game in such a way that every NPC is unique. No one is copy pasted. Well, maybe a few, but those are just like either Shinra soldiers or a few kids here and there. A lot of these NPCs, especially in each town, in each region, are very unique. And throughout the game, they can also change dialogue, which was kind of teased in Remake, right? Once a certain event happens, let's say the plate falling, these NPCs are scared, they don't know what to do, they're stuck there in a certain sector. Things happen in the world around them that they give you more side quests to help their chocobos, this and that. So NPCs here in this game, that's a lot of budget when it comes to game development, right? Because in game development, let's say for example, one of the biggest games out there is Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is easily, upon release, millions and millions of units sold, right? At least for GTA 5, these NPCs in the city, you can just punch them, hit them, and only a few of them give you quests or side missions. With that, it's just like, I hope they add more to the NPCs, and a lot of them are copy pasted too. Like, you can totally notice it. But in FF7 Rebirth, these NPCs, even if they say a few things and it's on repeat, they give life to the world. Like, it feels like something lived in as a player. I play this straight. I play this like 7 days straight. And I felt like I was in a virtual reality. Like being immersed in the world of Final Fantasy VII. I never wanted the game to finish. That's how great it was. It was a magical game that had a lot of nostalgia bait, especially for OG fans, but at the same time, a world that I visited before. Well, obviously they did expand the world from the OG, and these NPCs just gave it more life. Let's talk about the characters. So, Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barret, Red 13, Yuffie, Kate Sith, and the last two, Sid, Vincent. Obviously, we have our Sephiroth, but I don't want to say every character out there. So let's just focus on our main characters in general, because I'll probably be here for the longest time if I talked about the other characters. So there's the party characters. In Rebirth, as you progress to Disc 1, each character at a certain region or a certain part of the story had their time to shine. From lore, backstory, to even story beats that connect with the social bonding that I mentioned earlier. Not just with like Cloud, but with each other character. Let's say Tifa and Aerith. You see their relationship progress throughout this game. But yeah, there was a good balance to giving each character a time to shine, except for Sid and Vincent, obviously, because they were introduced towards the end. But even the latecomers such as Yuffie and Kate Sith, you can see from the time you see Yuffie and from the time she joins your party, she gets a lot of lines, like a lot of character building to each party member. Love her or hate her, she's adorable, right? But yeah, so each character in a region, or even when they visit their hometown, basically dealing with the past, they get that story beat wherein you feel bad for them. You feel like you're in their shoes. You've experienced somewhat a similar aspect in your life, because FF7 is very grounded in such a way that as a Final Fantasy game, even if we have aliens, vampires, magic, it's still very much, grounded in a way that it relates to real life events. Things we experience in life in general. Like, especially anxiety, depression, loss. These story beats really help the player get attached to each and every character in the story. I can't do a review without talking about music, right? So I had to decide before the game came out that which headphones would I be using. And luckily my Rode NTH made that easier. My Rode headphones made that easier because they broke and I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna use the Sony's, which I'm actually using right now. Going back to music, I wanted to pick the best headphones because I knew, coming from Remake, that we would be getting the best video game music there is this year. Probably even this decade, I would say. So they did announce there were 400 new tracks, and I'm like, wow, 400 new tracks. The music is probably one of the best parts of Final Fantasy, not just 7, but in general. Like the whole Final Fantasy compilation from 1 to 16, they all have great music. All of them. And with FF7 as the golden goat, they said, okay, here's budget for music, do what you want to do. And Nobuo Uematsu and his crew of people and other new composers, they were able to collab with Nobuo, and even Nobuo himself did different renditions of the OG music. It really felt like you were playing a video game and an orchestra was playing behind you. That's how intense the music was. And gladly, I'll be watching the orchestra this September in Singapore. So I'll be looking forward to that for sure. Okay, I think this is a fun part. Combat here is probably the DNA of Final Fantasy moving forward. I know we had more of an action pace combat with FF16. I actually loved it, but it felt too easy at the same time. I wish there was more to it. Like, I see the potential, and basically it's just like a God of War mixed with other aspects of gaming. It's just a pattern, right? Like, and you're only using one character. I wish you used the whole party, because that's Final Fantasy. You use a party, not just one character. I think that's why FF15 kind of failed. Well, not failed, but was kind of disappointing at first because you were just using Noctis. And this one is similar. You're just using Clive. But with Rebirth, using all your characters and having them have unique sets of moves, damn, I don't know what else you can ask for. Coming into this, the trailers did tease us dual tech or combos. I don't know how they call it back in the day, but basically it's just synergy, synergizing with your party members. Then it does help out with certain situations during the fight where you can interrupt animations at the same time. It will save your ass for sure. So yeah, the combat is a big part of it. The materia itself, obviously they introduced more materia here and even duplicated more of the magnifies, elementals, and I guess the synergy too. I think we get at least 2 synergies here, or 3, and then more magnifies as well. They did, deliver on that aspect of the game. And what's great about it, I'm playing hard mode right now. It's so much harder in a way that it makes you discover new things within the combat. Like, oh, I didn't know I could do this one. It makes you want to also experiment a little bit more, because sometimes when you're fighting a boss, it's not working out well. It's something where you have to fix your material loadout, and at the same time, you also have to learn each character's moveset on what works with the enemy better. Because sometimes you could be stuck with just using Cloud the whole time, but spoilers, just minor spoilers here, but with New Game Plus, you can just take Cloud out of the party and just use 3 different characters. Experiment and discover new things and even new combinations on what works well, because sometimes you're just locked in with Cloud and you only have a few sets of combinations. But if you change Cloud to another character, the combat flows differently as well. You just don't have to rely on a swordsman. You can have a full-fledged ranged Yuffie, Aerith, and Barret. That's crazy, right? So I think the only thing that they just need to work on is what everyone says is the material loadouts. I mean, that's not really part of combat, but that's setting up the combat. And that takes up a lot of your time. Man, in this story, there were a lot of times wherein I thought I wouldn't cry or give a shit. But I did hold it together. But there are just certain parts where this story makes you smile. It hits you emotionally too. Like, I remember going to Cosmo Canyon, and it's even during the day, it wasn't even nighttime. Damn, it hit me there. The music hit me, the characters, just seeing Cosmo Canyon, man. Going around talking to these NPCs. Man, and the horizon, seeing what's out there. It is great. And I remember even from going all the way up to Cosmo and then going back down when the sunset eventually hits. Man, it had a good lead up to it. So yeah, this game is something else.
Sacred lands have been rich in
Join me as we search for this.
Damn, they really made this game a magical adventure. If you're a true fan of FF7,
I invite you to do so.
this game grabs you by the heart,
And lift yourselves higher.
pulling every string, and plays with your emotions in a way that
no man, woman, or child would suffer.
any form of media will ever, get close to touching your emotions.
Put your faith in our great mother. She would never forsake us.
From smiling to having fun,
Children, one and all,
to sad moments, to serious moments, to goofy moments,
ever keeping calamity at bay. If people everywhere resolve
from music to the world building here, to the characters, through the story, whether or not you like where they're headed to with the lore, this is an experience.
Put your faith in our great mother. She would never forsake
What a
us.
crazy history of gaming. Alright, so let's talk about my rating for the game. I think this game is a 10 out of 10. It's probably gonna be Game of the Year. The only game that will probably be nominated at the same time be considered as Game of the Year would be Hades 2, maybe Wukong, and if Elden Ring becomes a full game. But it's still considered a DLC right now. But we'll see. I think FF7 Rebirth takes the spot as Game of the Year. Easily 10 out of 10. There are some flaws to the game, wherein maybe some pacing issues, but pacing was always a problem even in the OG. And it's a way to just, I would say, balance the emotions of the player. Because obviously, once you get too emotional, we need to be hyped up again for something else, right? There are also some problems in terms of like material loadouts again. Maybe the ending as what people would consider it as a flaw or problem with the game. I love the ending, and I don't think it should be considered as a negative in the game. So yeah, 10 out of 10. I wish I could give it a higher score, but it does deserve that Metacritic of 92, 93 as of today. And it's still the highest reviewed video game for 2024. My name is Premier Avenue. I do stream 3 to 4 times a week on Twitch, and I'll be playing Stellar Blade. But if you do miss out on the streams, I'll be uploading them up on YouTube in 4K as well. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when a new video goes live. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next stream.